Good evening. Welcome to the Rational Radicals. All right. Welcome to the Rational Radicals. Really got enough respect for everybody that's tuning into this live because this is not a very pleasant topic. We're going to be talking about war. And it's funny because if you're my age or older or younger by decades, or if you were a peer of my great grandparents or their great grandparents, you've pretty much lived in a perpetual state of warfare. The United States has been in perpetual warfare since before its founding. The vast majority of our labor, which is represented by revenues, tax revenues, and other forms of riches, the vast majority of the wealth that we work for, we work to create, that all other members of the working class create, the vast majority of that wealth goes towards the war infrastructure, the military and its various agencies and apparati. So we live in a perpetual war state, a nation that was founded in warfare and sustained by warfare. But I find that even though we live surrounded and we're sustained in everything we enjoy in life, whatever you enjoy, whatever comfort you have in life, whether it is you ADOS, a FBA scumbag, and you enjoy the United States, you enjoy your citizenship, you proud to be a Black American descendant of slavery foundationally, then that's a product of war. If you enjoy computers, product of war. If you have a car and you like to have it fueled and you like, being able to pay relatively low percentage of your income on luxury items compared to the rest of the world, all brought to you by warfare. The rhetoric of capitalism tells us that American ingenuity, American innovation, American outcompeting the rest of the world is the reason why the United States enjoys such a high standard of living, or as Barack Obama called it, the American way of life, which is not open for negotiation. And when Obama, Bill Clinton, Bush, Reagan, Bush again, Bush before, and even because he's not very articulate, he couldn't state it, but he believes it. Even Trump, whenever the leader of the so-called free world says the American way of life is not negotiable, and it ain't just presidents, Dick Cheney said it, he wasn't president. That means anything that causes a disruption in the American way of life will be destroyed, will be attacked, will be targeted. Because it's not negotiable. And if anybody comes to you and says, hey, there's something I want and it's not negotiable, that's a threat. That's a threat to you. I don't even care if it's something minor. It could be your peanut butter and jelly sandwich for lunch. It was like, hey, I want that sandwich and it's not negotiable. And we casually exist in an environment of perpetual warfare. We all enjoy warfare, and everybody in the United States, even if you are poor like me, even if you are a so-called racial minority like me, even if you don't aspire to enjoy all the spoils of empire, there's something you need to be aware of constantly, and that is this concept of sterilizing distance that we all participate in. I've told the story before where I had this professor, a white liberal professor who was a pacifist. And he tells me that he doesn't condone violence. We were debating Frantz Fanon, believe it or not. And he claims that he respected Frantz Fanon's scholarship and he would assign Frantz Fanon for his various classes. And he even tried to put a non-violent slant on Frantz Fanon's writing. And if you know Fanon, and you know Fanonian ideology, that's just sacrilege. We get mad about when white folks co-opt, or what do you call appropriate our music. We get mad when they appropriate our language. We get mad when they appropriate dumb shit, how we dress. A white boy turn his hat backwards and buy an oversized hoodie and sag his pants. We get outraged. But the number one source of appropriation from our oppressors, our eternal bitter enemies, is ideological and academic appropriation. And because that happens in elite spaces we don't really get access to. I mean, y'all do have some awareness whenever a black person invents something, and then a white corporation signs off and gets the patent or whatever and profits from it. Y'all, we are a bit aware of that. But by and large, we let that pass. Because we're more concerned about, Katy Perry trying to dress and dance like Beyonce. But I digress. All I'm saying is this is a concept we need to know, and that's sterilizing distance. And so I was having a back and forth with this professor, and I'm like, there's no way. You're not a pacifist. I said, every aspect of your life, you're an upper middle class white man with a PhD, very affluent. You've traveled in just about every country of this world. You're an affluent, established, and I have to go, heterosexual, cisgendered white male. Motherfucker, your existence is violence. Your very presence is violence. Even though you come in peace. Even though you come in Birkenstocks and a ponytail and wire rim glasses and a tattered sweater, your very existence is violence. And so I told him, you have a sterilizing distance. You're not peaceful. You're not a pacifist. What you have is a sterilizing distance between your status, your well-being, your wealth, and the violence needed to carry out that wealth, which most of us do. And depending on where you are in the hierarchy, the higher you are in the hierarchy, the more distance you have between the violence that sustains you and the violence that is carried out to sustain you. So if you're a poor black dude that's in the street trying to get yours in these streets, in the struggle, you don't really have a very wide sterilizing distance because you engage in direct violence, you take direct risks to your life and psychological well-being to get that paper, to get rich or die trying. But if you're that same young man and you stay in school, you learn to conjugate verbs, you learn your verb tenses, you learn long division, and you go on and get a little college degree, even if you're poor, and you become a minor professional, a minor bureaucrat in the city government, a minor cog in the corporate machine, then you don't have to take it to the streets. You ain't got to strap up. You ain't got to be on that daily grind. And so you have a slightly more sterilizing distance between you and the violence that sustains you. And we should all be aware of the perpetual warfare and the sterilizing distance that we're able to create between ourselves and the perpetual warfare that sustains our way of life. Even if that way of life is distasteful to you, even if you find ways to circumvent that way of life, you should still be aware of it. And everybody living in the United States, even if you're not racist, even if you don't vote for Democrats, we, by virtue of living in the belly of the beast and sustaining ourselves in the belly of the beast, owe a debt to the rest of the world. We owe a debt to our ancestors. We owe a debt to our descendants. And we owe a debt to the people on the front lines of imperialism. I don't care if they're in a artisanal, that's crazy, artisanal mining. Look that shit up, artisanal mining. These motherfucking Urugos. These psychopaths are out there, motherfucker. Artisanal mining in the Congo. Or you dealing with the Niger Delta, oil extraction in the Niger Delta, or just nutmeg in Grenada. I say to my wife all the time, these Europeans, they're not content with doing things the wrong way. They want to do things the worst way. Something as simple as palm oil or chocolate that grows for free out the ground. They gonna turn that shit into a horrendous industry. But I digress. Anyway, I'm here to talk about war. And I said war because it's inescapable. And I know some of y'all believe you can go into yourself. You can withdraw into yourself and have inner peace. You can transcend. I'm above it. I ain't into that. Some of y'all turn off the news. But ain't no, even if you go off grid on Native American soil, even if you go to Africa, what? Did the thing come back? My computer crashed, y'all. It says Chrome shut down incorrectly. Oh Lord. I don't know why I'm getting feedback now. I don't know why I'm getting feedback. Shouldn't be going through this. My computer just restarted on its own, but it shouldn't be talking to me. My computer, God damn it, restarted on its own, but it shouldn't be talking. Let's see. Hold on a second. My computer, damn it, restarted on its own. Hold on. See, I get too deep. I need to start talking about Shannon Sharp going to town on young girls. See, I get too deep. I need to start talking about Shannon Sharp going to town on young girls. See, I get too deep. I need to start talking about Shannon Sharp going to town. Okay. Hello? Please bear with me. I appreciate y'all who don't abandon your boy. Hello? Please bear with me. I appreciate y'all. All right, let me just. I just turned. Hopefully, because the computer restarted, I just turned the speaker on and off. All right, we good? Is everybody good? All right. I know I got lost. I don't even know if I'm on Insta anymore. Anyway, like I said, my bad. Or maybe not my bad, but I'm just gonna go back in. Let's leave sterilizing distance alone. We're getting too deep. So anyway, let's talk about war. Where's Skip at? If Skip was here, it wouldn't have been such a tragedy. Let me see. I spoke to him earlier, but I didn't even remind him that we owe the people an obligation today. Anyway, I want to talk about wars, and I want y'all to join the discussion, right? And Dr. Bobby E. Wright said, and I lived this. It's crazy that Dr. Wright would say shit, and I gotta live it. This man said something. He passed away before many of y'all were born. It's like, it's so funny. We have all this. We're in awe of prophecy. Like, if somebody can predict the future, we think they are supernatural. When all you need to predict the future is have an understanding of history. And if you understand and comprehend and follow history, you can watch the trajectory. Like, if I know your history, If I knew how you came up and what you did the night before last and the night before last, I could predict your future. I won't have to look at your palm. I won't have to pull out no funny cards with funny symbols on it. I won't have to throw no calories. You know, I know, bro. I got homies out there. I be looking at my homies. Love them. They're like, oh, he about to get his ass beat. He about to get locked up. He about to get divorced. He about to get his car repoed. And it'll all come true. Not magic, just looking. So that's what future. So Bobby Wright said, that's how predictions work. That's how prophecy works. If you believe Jesus knew the future, Jesus knew the past. Knowing the future, all it takes is knowing the past. Jesus is like, oh, there'll be wars and rumors of wars. If you've been around people and you know 10 minutes of human history, you know it's going to be wars. That ain't no prophecy in the days. But anyway, I digress. Let's talk about war. Because Bobby Wright said, see, I always circle back. We've been in this country the longest and we understand it the least. And we've lived under perpetual warfare. We live under perpetual warfare, but we don't understand warfare. And I know y'all know the definition of warfare. It used to be, see, I had to go look warfare up again. So I got mad haters, that people that hate watch me, just waiting for me to fall. They have the gall to pray for my downfall. So when I was a political science, a freshman, when I was a freshman at Brooklyn College, political science major, I thought that war, by definition, could only occur between two states, the contemporary definition of war. But white folks are always changing definitions because if you know lawyers, law is extremely dependent on definitions. You can't be a lawyer unless you have a mastery of definition and meaning. And also logic, fallacies, but definition is essential to law. You know, you ever see a lawyer and their office is full of books, it's mostly definitions, right? And then you see the way, and most of us hate reading legal documents because of the way it's worded, because definitions and clarity of what is being stated must be absolute. Because if not, when you go to court, the judge gonna get in your butt. So anyway, white big people, white folks in power, the capitalists, the elites, the oppressors are always having to change definitions because they write laws. And they try to write laws that only apply to me, only apply to black people, only apply to the poor, only apply to migrants, only apply to nations outside of the Western Europe. They want to write laws that govern only Africa, that govern only South America and Asia. They want to be able to write laws that impose restrictions on outsiders, but allow them to do whatever the blood clot they want to do. That's how, and that's why they're always having to play with definitions. If you read Noam Chomsky, and rest in peace, Noam Chomsky. He's not dead, but I know it's coming. Remember that song, I Got Depression, when that dude said, rest in peace, Betty White. I know she's still alive, but it's coming. So if somebody's watching this a few months from now. Wow, really? Oh, wow. Wow. See, I told you I got haters. This is a Benetton shirt. Benetton. I know Benetton ain't hot now, but when I was in high school and couldn't afford it, Benetton was hot shit. I got this at the thrift store, you know, for like $6. But I'm like, this is a Benetton shirt. I used to keep Benetton catalogs under my bed. So now I finally got one and people hate on it. Damn. People go hard in the paint. But where was I? I was saying something about the longest and the least. So anyway, let's get into the discussion. I'm gonna open it up. I can't be long. I got a little less than an hour left. Actually, I got to be out of here right on time. Skip ain't coming through. Let me just send Skip. Cool. Just tell him cool. Y'all don't know this. Skip is a superstar, so you can't. You know, I got a couple of friends that are like artists, and if you got artist friends, you know, you got to handle them delicately because artists, they see in sound and they hear in color. They're weirdos. So if you got a friend who's an artist, you got to be careful with them. But we're gonna bootleg his music. I said when he don't show up, we bootleg his music, right? So we're gonna get a Skip bootleg on tonight. Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah. Noam Chomsky. I was talking about what what was I gonna say that Noam Chomsky said? I totally forgot because my feelings got hurt and I have to reset myself mentally and emotionally. Oh fuck. Jesus Christ. I bought it secondhand. Does that account for something? I kept it out of a landfill. I know I said RIP. I know he's alive, but I still, you know, by the time this video goes viral, he probably won't be. Oh, definitions, right. So if you read Noam Chomsky, thank you, Robin, co-hosting tonight. If you read Noam Chomsky, he went into great detail about the right of return and defining terrorism. The UN came up with the right of return, and they were trying. This is during the Cold War, and they were trying to target the Soviet Union and individuals from under the Iron Curtain who was displaced by Soviet Union industrialization and expansion programs. So they wanted to write UN resolutions to condemn and embarrass the Soviet Union. So they would talk about the right of return, which was part of a basic fundamental human right. But the problem is, if you're going to talk about the right of return for Kazakhs and Armenians and Polish people, then that would also apply, because it's a universal resolution. It would also apply to Palestinians. So a universal human right was the right to leave any land and to return to land. No nation that wanted to be a signatory to the UN and be respected and derive benefits from the UN, being a member state of the UN, could prevent its citizens from freedom of travel abroad or to return home after that travel. And it was called the right of return. And the Soviet Union, because it was under constant attack by Western powers, capitalist interests, they were restricting the travel of Soviet citizens. And if Soviet citizens weren't as free to travel, and if you know the history of Berlin, East and West Berlin, they weren't allowing people to leave. And if people left and became Westernized, they didn't want them coming back to the Soviet Union. So after the Soviet Union was dissolved, they no longer had to struggle with that definition. They simply just erased it. So now they were like, well, the only people we were attacking the Soviet Union because they didn't want Palestinians going to the UN, going to the International Criminal Court. The same thing with the definition of terrorism. If you look how hard, dating back to the post-World War era, dating back to the Black List, they have struggled with defining terrorism. Violence in the act of a political violence, because every time they define terrorism and try to encode it into law, they have pretty much, for every finger they pointed at Muslims or radical and all this, 3 fingers were pointing back at them. I don't know why people say you point a finger and 4. So they struggled to come up with a definition of terrorism that didn't apply to U.S. terrorism, to Christian terrorists, to Zionist terrorists, to right-wing fascist terrorists, Operation Gladio, and to the point where the United States says, fuck it. I tell you what, U.S. soldiers are exempt from any laws outside of the U.S. How about that, motherfuckers? We'll sign a treaty, and if you don't have nukes, shut the fuck up. Does the UN have an army? Because if you don't have an army, I suggest you shut the fuck up. So it was just some ham-bone, jammy Rambo shit. But I digress. So let's talk about war. I want to talk about the various types of war, because there's a lot of different types of war. And if you think all war is the same, all war is bad, that's some liberal shit. And I'm not as hard on liberal as the rest of y'all. Some of y'all motherfuckers hate liberals more than y'all hate conservatives. Gosh, y'all hate liberals. And I don't think people hate liberal because of their study into liberalism, or even they comprehend the negative impacts of liberalism, or they hate liberals because for any other reason than the United States, since the campaign of Mike Dukakis. Mike Dukakis was the last public official who embraced the term liberal. He came out and was like, I'm a liberal. And it was one of the most embarrassing presidential campaigns in U.S. political history. And from Dukakis forward, the word liberal became a dirty word, when before people would march up and down and proudly profess their liberalism. But I think most people in the United States, radical or otherwise, black folks. And here's another thing that black folks in the term liberal, and I know I'm going down a rabbit hole. We hate liberals so much because most of our leaders are conservatives, hyper conservative. Many of our leaders come from the cloth, men of the cloth. They're men of God, because from slavery, the only authority black people were able to have was religious authority. You would have a plantation minister and a house Negro. And so when we got off the plantation and looked towards leadership, we looked towards the house Negro and we looked towards the plantation slave preacher. And we still haven't broke that. We still got mostly, I mean, don't make me name even our beloved Dr. King, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, even our beloved El Haj and Malik Sabat, even our beloved Malcolm X, its minister Malcolm X, Reverend Al Sharpton, Reverend Jesse Jackson. So we've had a lot of, and by definition, you can't be religious without being status quo conservative. And so black folks, even radical black people, have a vein of conservatism running through them because, number one, the corporate power structure is illiberal, anti-liberal. And yes, and I get called a liberal. I'm not, but I understand. I get called a liberal simply because I acknowledge and think we should operate based on an understanding of the distinction between liberal and conservative, between right-wing, centrist, populist. I think these words have impact. They grant us understanding, and that understanding should guide actions. And people get mad at me because, well, they all the same. Ain't no difference between Obama, Kamala, and Trump and Bush. Yeah, it's all the same. Yeah. Yes, I do. I want you to understand liberalism. I want you to understand the history of liberalism. I want to understand the impacts of liberalism. I want to understand the distinctions between liberalism and conservatism. But I know that's too much, because anybody talk like I do, if I don't just get up here like Dr. Fubar and say, they're all the same, if I don't make it simple, you don't want to hear the truth. So I'm going to lie to you, make it sound fly to you. But anyway, let's get to war. I'm losing time. People thinking, I'm not defending liberals. I'm not defending liberalism. I'm defending critical thinking. And critical thinking just does not allow you to just swipe the table. All right. If I ain't said it 3 times, I know. But I think Dr. Fubar probably has that copywritten. Dr. Fubar don't want none of us to deal with white man paperwork, but he gets to use white man paper. He's the only black man that can properly use white man paper. But anyway, let's talk about war, because like I said, war inundates every aspect of our lives. Even if we never enlisted into the white man army, even if we never took up arms for the red, white, and blue, even if we never celebrated, supported any U.S. military campaign, war inundates everything we do. And the majority of your productive life, the resources and wealth that you generate, will go to the U.S. war machine if you work within the U.S. And if you live outside the U.S., and even if you live in the U.S., the U.S. military is the #1 emitter of fossil fuels. It's the largest single emitter of fossil fuels, nuclear contamination, depleted uranium to nuclear waste and fallout, lead contamination of soil, water, and air. The United States military, even if you live in a place that is called peaceful, the military and armies are negatively impacting your well-being. They're impacting the well-being of your descendants who ain't even been born yet. So anyway, let's talk about war. There's different types of war. The main type of war that has been outlawed. The UN essentially outlawed warfare. War was made illegal by the UN Convention, meaning that no nation, if a nation had a conflict, all nations were obligated to peacefully negotiate their disputes through diplomacy. And if they couldn't directly engage in diplomacy, then they were to carry their grievances to the United Nations, and all nations, all legitimate confirmed nations of the world will come together and determine who is right and who is wrong. And to engage in warfare, absence of defense, defending your borders, your defined, agreed upon borders, was to engage in an international crime. And the leaders, the bureaucrats, the logistics experts, and every single soldier opened themselves up to international arrest, trial, incarceration, and or execution. Now, a bunch of powerful white men sat down and wrote that rule, and a bunch of Africans and a bunch of people from the Caribbean, Central America, and some folks from Asia got punished, while the U.S. has engaged in repeated violations of this very rule that it imposed. The FDR administration sat there with the rest of them white folks after the League of Nations dissolved and they established the UN. And I agree. I think war should be against the law. So a war of aggression is when one nation violates the territorial integrity, invades, not just invade though, but listen to this. When you invade or enter the territory of another nation with your military without the consent, when you blockade another nation from allowing its citizens, its resources, its commercial enterprises to freely come and go from with their own territory. So the United States has been at war with Cuba, illegally, war of aggression. Venezuela, war of aggression. Haiti, war of aggression. Every single president, from FDR to Trump 2.0, is an active international war criminal, because the United States, now prior to FDR, I'm not saying the US didn't invade and boo, 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 and do all that shit, but it wasn't law. And when I'm talking about law, I'm talking about their laws. I ain't gonna sit here like some ridiculous sovereign citizen and just pull laws out my ass. I'm gonna go by the laws they wrote for themselves. Even the presidents some of y'all like, Obama and Jimmy Carter, Kennedy, some of the presidents y'all then convinced yourselves were good and decent men. The United States, war of aggression. That's why we need to stop saying wars. We use the word war too loosely. There was no war in Vietnam. There was the Vietnam invasion. The Panamanian invasion, not the Panamanian War when Reagan went into Panama. The Grenada invasion. The U.S. invaded Haiti at least half a dozen times since I was born. And I'm not that old. The Iraqi invasion, it was not a war by their definition. The Afghan invasion, the criminal invasions, and stop posting them pictures of y'all nephews and cousins going off to the U.S. military. By the definition of the very Constitution, by the constitutions and treaties that the United States is signatory to, every single one of y'all beloved uncles, cousins, and them that put on that suit and get that goddamn crew cut is a war criminal. Even some of my beloved relatives, who I think are great men, good men, but by definition, they're war criminals. No U.S. citizen who does not want to engage in an international war crime simply by enlisting. If you join a criminal enterprise that's actively engaged in crime, ask any MS-13 member, even you ain't even got to be. So I digress. So war of aggression is the highest crime, according to international law, any state or state actors can commit. War, initially, they called it a war against peace. If you're invading or attacking another nation without cause, without a legitimate declaration, and the only legitimate declaration of war is to protect your territorial integrity. So if the Viet Cong and the Iraqi and Afghan insurgents weren't here, and even if the Viet Cong and the Iraqs and the inside job, you can, Bush knocked down the towers. It was you, nigga. Tell the truth, nigga. Even if that's the case, these are non-state actors. So even if me and I get a bunch of people to go into Canada and do some dirt, Canada would not have a right to invade the United States, because unless I was sanctioned, armed, trained, and funded by the government, I'm not a government actor. So even if people from foreign countries come here to do dirt, if you cannot prove, and the only way to prove that is through a criminal investigation. So if someone, even if the story of 9/11 went down the way the U.S. government said it went down, the way George, I cannot tell a lie, Bush, George, I hand feed hard candies to Michelle Obama, Bush. Even if their story was right, it would not justify. First of all, they would have to invade Saudi Arabia, but that's another, because most of the people came from Saudi Arabia. They were Wahhabist. But don't get me into that, because my computer gonna shut down again. So that's a form of war. It is a worse form of war. It is the most common form of war. There's only one caveat to that. The U.S., the West, does not attack nuclear powers. But we're going to get into that a little more too. But the U.S. don't fight nobody that got power to fight back. And if they think you got power to fight back, they will embargo your country. They will send weapons inspectors. And once they know all the fucking weapons inspectors have said ain't no weapons there, then they invade you. I know y'all go to football games and watch them jets fly over, and we go watch Will Smith movies. Will Smith is one of the biggest pro-American military propaganda, probably in the number 2 top U.S. military propagandist, Common, the rapper. Big Calm Saddam, he in that movie, submarine movies and shit. Most of these black action heroes are all pro-Pentagon propagandists. Say that 3 times real fast. Pro-Pentagon propagandists. But they don't fight nobody who can fight back. They don't fight. They didn't go into Iraq until they knew Iraq no longer had the capacity. But this is what they don't understand, because I'm about to say something. If Skip was here, he'd be very proud of me, because they're soulless. So the U.S. Western powers don't understand people fighting on principle, people standing on business, because they're completely materially oriented. We fight for money. We fight for resources. We fight for opportunity. I'm fighting so I can get me a Dodge Charger and get college tuition paid. And they talk shit. They talk a lot of shit. We're fighting for principles. We're fighting for the flag. We're fighting for freedom. But we all know, you take the goddamn free tuition and Dodge Chargers off the table, the U.S. wouldn't have nothing but a half a dozen soldiers. A half a dozen psychopath, bloodthirsty serial killers who want to serial kill legally. So they put this shit on the table. But other people, them communist guerrillas, those so-called jihadists, they fighting. They not fighting for Dodge Chargers and to get out of debt. And every time people who are fighting for what they truly believe in go up against people fighting for Dodge Chargers, it doesn't matter who has the best equipment or even who has the higher body count. We just came through the 50th anniversary of the Vietnam War. That's why we need to put more stake into cultivating and sustaining ideology above anything else. But I digress. Y'all don't want to hear it. Ain't nobody paying attention to Chuck D. Chuck D is a puppet for imperialism, but he don't do movies. The movies have a greater impact than he's doing that diplomacy. He's bad, but them movies, man, the U.S. military movie, you know, if you knew how much Pentagon consultation, how much Pentagon hardware and Pentagon approval. Anytime you're watching a movie and you see any type of military hardware, all the Marvel movies, which I've seen them all. I like comic book shit. I like super sci-fi. Anytime you see any movie that's any action movie, if they got helicopters and jets and tanks and AR-15s and they're on military bases and all that, anytime you see that, you know that script was submitted to the Pentagon and approved and edited by the Pentagon. Ain't no fucking freedom of speech in this country. Unless you want to sit in a little corner like I'm sitting and talk to next to nobody and not even get no contributions for talking. But anytime you see any real money or resources behind something, don't believe it. So that's war of aggression. The next war, which is the counter to war of aggression, is war of decolonization, or they might call it war of liberation. These are wars that are enacted by militaries, but more often than not, it's not formal militaries that are fought to expel aggressors, expel invaders, to reclaim lost territory. Now, when you see these type of war, this is good war. This is appropriate war. This is worthy war, and this is illegal war. More people have been assassinated, condemned, exiled for engaging in this warfare right here than have been for wars of aggression, even though the laws on the book say that nations have a right to self-defense. But the only nation currently that has a right to self-defense is it real? But moving on. But I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. What is related to or married to wars of decolonization is guerrilla warfare and asymmetrical warfare. Guerrilla and asymmetrical warfare has yet to be defeated. This is one of the most effective strategies and tactics for war. That's why when you see brothers in the public space holding all these guns, you know, Black Rambo, the Huey P. Newton Gun Club, the Not Fucking Around Coalition. When you see these individuals online with all these guns and ammo, they're not serious. Guerrilla, or it used to be known as guerrilla warfare, and the term guerrilla is a Spanish term. They claim that guerrilla warfare started in the Spanish Civil War, but it did not. Native Americans were engaged in guerrilla warfare tactics. Africans, runaway slaves, were engaged in guerrilla warfare. From the Quilombos of Brazil to the Maroons of Jamaica to the Gullah Geechee and Seminoles of the U.S. South and West. Centuries before the Spanish Civil War. But you know, they don't want to give us credit for shit. But guerrilla warfare is a Spanish term because they talk about, they stole our history. They still take credit for all our shit. And guerrilla warfare means little war. Guerrilla means little. I believe that's it. Let me just look. Small war. Okay, small, not little. Small war in Spanish. So when you put that suffix ILLA in Spanish, when you put that, so Guerrilla, or what do you say, Guerrilla means war, and that means little war. And what guerrilla warfare, but now the more technical term, they call it asymmetric warfare. Because before, warfare is I got an army, you got an army, we meet up on the battlefield and mass slaughter. Or you have an army, I have an army, we lock down territory and we claim territory, then we fight this long conflict to gain territory, to push back. And when you lock down the territory, you set up a perimeter, you set up a base and communications, and then you get the next territory until I push you out or destroy you. Guerrilla warfare, asymmetric warfare, does not seek to take territory. They do not seek to establish an army. They don't even seek to take the state or to even defeat the enemy. There's my favorite books, The War of the Flea, The War of the Flea, and both books are called Guerrilla Warfare. One was written by Mao. One was written by The Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare by Kwame Ture, and of course, probably the best known book on guerrilla warfare is Che Guevara's book on guerrilla warfare. Guerra, whatever. So anyway, one of the main things is that the guerrilla does not depend on anything that can be denied them by the enemy. Or somebody did the fish. Somebody said like fish to fishy. Mao, in his book on guerrilla warfare, said the guerrilla is the fish and the people are the water. So the guerrilla is born out of the people. The guerrilla moves through the people. The guerrilla is indistinguishable from the people. If you read about the probably successful guerrilla campaigns, we know Iraq, Afghanistan, Vietnam, Algeria, Namibia, formerly Rhodesia, the Rhodesian War, later, before his name was changed to Zimbabwe, that was successful. The Quilombo Wars, the Seminole Wars, there were several successful campaigns. And many of these campaigns, what I say all the time, which we don't pay attention to, when Europeans lose the war, they work to win the peace. So they'll sit at the table and negotiate and treaty and then start to undermine you. Several Native American nations fought the U.S. to a standstill, to a détente, and then the U.S. began to work and to undermine. Okay, let's sign a treaty. And that's what Del Jones called loosen up to get a tighter grip. They'll call peace. They'll call uncle. They'll wave the white flag. But they know once you let your guard down, once I sign some damn piece of paper and you begin to negotiate and adhere, same thing that happened in Haiti. Haiti was guerrilla warfare. But the element of guerrilla warfare is no true guerrilla is going to depend on a rifle, a machine gun, or ammunition. A true guerrilla fighting force is only going to depend on what they can get at the local pharmacy, the local hardware store, what they can get from their cousin's basement. And they are not going to demonstrate they don't wear uniforms, they don't put on an RBG patch. So anybody that's doing that is, so if you are a black man or black woman in the United States and you got all these guns, the only thing you're going to be able to pick, oh, Mao, how could I forget? Thank you, Robin. Thank you, Robin. The Mao. Magnificent. D-Dan, my man. The only thing so like I said, if you are a black man or woman and you online, which I saw a picture, and y'all stop sharing these goddamn pictures. First of all, stop letting your children shoot fucking guns. Your children can use slingshots. They can use bows and arrows and even crossbows. Hell, get them paintball guns or Nerf guns. No child that is still in this cognitive stage of physical and mental development should be shooting live ammunition or even fucking with real guns, because that is a key source of lead contamination. And keep your kids away from the goddamn guns. I ain't even got to talk. I shouldn't have to be saying this. Fuck is wrong with dude? But anyway, that's another discussion. But if you are a black person with a gun, the best thing that gun gonna do for you in this stage of the struggle is to shoot the crackhead that's trying to steal your car stereo. And nobody even steal car stereos anymore. But more likely than not, 9 times out of 10, that gun's going to be used to harm someone, your loved one, or somebody close to you. So we got all these hearing damaged, lead contaminated children walking around because somebody wanted that one tattooed up dude that got his little babies holding guns. What the fuck is wrong with y'all? And I'm not saying your children shouldn't learn martial skills, learn how to fight, learn how to shoot. But they should also be allowed to develop themselves cognitively and physically without being exposed to harsh contaminants. It's enough plastic and other contaminants in their environment they can't avoid for you to be voluntarily, unnecessarily putting the kids at risk. And stop sharing them damn pictures of them little kids and they mamas and daddies all holding these big ass guns and the little kids standing there. What the fuck is wrong with you? Let them go play Xbox. They'll go get the same level of coordination, hand-eye coordination and bloodlust from, they don't get blood. I know I'm going too far, but they'll get the same level of coordination shooting, playing, Gears of War as shooting an actual gun without the lead contamination. Y'all stop that now. Another form of warfare, I'm gonna have to pick up the pace, is psychological warfare. I feel like I shouldn't have to say what this is, but it is. But what we don't understand is that both sides can do this. We're very keen on understanding how psychological warfare impacts us. I'm telling you, for a white woman to call a black child the N-word, and then, I got to stop saying that. Dick Gregory said, don't say the N-word. Dick Gregory said, N is just the 16th letter of the alphabet. The word is nigga. And we should say it when we need to say it because that's their shame. It's not ours. So we don't need to creep around that word. When it's necessary to say it, we say it. So if a white woman could call a black child a nigger and raise $500,000, that's psychological warfare against all African people. That is an assault. Let me tell you something. If you white and listening to me, for you to wave an American flag on your car or put it on your front porch, or to put that black and white flag with the blue line across the middle, or you white boy, you put that Punisher flag on the back of your car, that's psychological fucking warfare. Black people are under perpetual assault. Perpetual assault. And some white folks think that, hey, I'm just doing the shit. I'm just carrying on tradition. But your motherfucking tradition is one of race war, of assault, genocide. So as a white, if you want to be one of the good ones, you should be challenging, subverting, and attacking your people's tradition. If you're simply carrying on, hey, this flag, this Confederate flag is my tradition. So we're under psychological warfare. In fact, Black people from the United States, I know this is not, I talked to my brothers from Nigeria, from Tanzania, South Africa, many Black people that don't live in the belly of the beast like we do. They're not as bombarded as we are. And they have sometimes can't understand us. What's wrong with the Blacks? What's wrong with African Americans? But psychological warfare is the norm for us. I'm telling you, as an African, if you wake up one day and you walk and you spent 24 hours in this country and you were not assaulted, if your sense of self was not under assault, you would be confused. You would feel insecure. In fact, I find when Black people enter affirming spaces, they don't feel very comfortable. All that Black stuff. Where you at? Oh, y'all talk all this Black stuff. When Black people simply affirm our humanity, people think we're being violent. Y'all ain't here on that Black stuff. Y'all ain't here being violent. How many times you didn't heard that in your life growing up? Y'all just want to tear stuff down. Y'all complaining. You got a victim mentality. Because I identify, look at all these assaults happening against my people all the time, every day. You got a victim mentality. So Black people, we tend to get alarmed or get concerned get angry or confused when we're not under psychological warfare. All this anti-woke, all this bleeding heart liberal from before anti-woke, urban, inner city. When I was a kid, that was the code word for black. Instead of saying woke, they say inner city or urban. At risk. I remember I was defined as at risk. I saw one of my files. I was sitting in Knox Elementary School. The motherfucker said I was at risk. And what was crazy was that the Kansas City, Missouri school district that defined me as an at-risk youth didn't know they was the motherfuckers put me at risk. That's like a lion looking at an antelope and be like, oh, this antelope, that antelope is at risk. And then pretending like they want to help the motherfucking antelope. If I was at risk, I don't feel like I was. Shout out to Grandma Thunetta. Shout out to Uncle Chris. Shout out to Tanisha. All the people was looking. I had mad people looking out for me. I wasn't at no goddamn risk outside of the Kansas City Police Department and other pernicious predatory institutions of that city. But y'all ain't here to hear about my struggle. So psychological warfare, but we can do it too. Get your little RBG frag. Let your little naps in your crinkle. If you got a little kid, let them little nappy. Let them little cornrows that are all frizzed up. White folks get mad as hell. Wear your bonnet. Wear them ugly ass. It looks poor hygiene, but them furry house shoes, if you can rock it, they don't like when black people like fuck you and your whole crew. Like I said, I like saying it, so I'm gonna say it. I got an opportunity. Let the booty meet. Them booty cheeks. One time, I remember I went to, it was 1992, 94. I went to the West Indian Day Parade. My aunt said, don't go to that parade. You're a Yankee, boy. You're a Yankee. You ain't ready for that. You're a Yankee from the Midwest. Do not take your ass to the West Indian Day Parade. You got to eat. This ain't for you. And I was like, nah, live by there. So I went to Labor Day, and she was right. My Yankee sentiments. And seeing them African people, you know, from Guyana, GT man, Jamaica, just all of St. Lucia, Trinidad, seeing them dance up the street. And then I walked up a little ways into Crown Heights, and I got to where the Hasidic people was. And they was looking at them black people gyrating down the street, and they wanted to, their faces were beet red. These people had on black. They looked like goddamn the black nationalist flag. They had on all black, and they were beet red flesh. I'm like, if we could put some green on these folks, they could get in the parade. Nah, because they're Haitian. Like when the soca music starts, I kind of have to sit down. I don't know about soca music. I mean, I love my West Indian brothers and sisters, but soca, now the dance hall, the rockers, you know, yeah, but I can't. What do you want from me? I told you I'm a Yankee, but I digress. So white folks get mad as hell when we simply be black. So be black as fuck. Even be the unapproved, unsanctioned black. Don't be a domestic dog, be a wolf. I think every black person should be engaged in unrelenting psychological warfare. If you go to work, put a little RBG flag on stick it in the plant. Get a little miniature one. Stick it in the plant. And even if they don't say shit, they see it. They see it. Once a week, say, hey, we're going to have black lunch every Wednesday. We're going to huddle up in the place, and we're just going to sit and encourage each other and do a little support group. Walk. I mean, these motherfuckers go see a mermaid with dreadlocks, and they want to fucking go vote for Trump and surrender. Take the democracy. Fuck this fucking democracy. So I don't know why we, as fragile as everything they say about us, safe space, fragile, I don't know why we don't engage in more psychological warfare. Even against the white folks you like, even if you're married to a white person. Even if you're married to a white person, make chitlins on fucking. Make some goddamn collards and don't even wash them properly. Make some of them gritty collard greens. Do the blackest shit you could think of doing on a regular basis. I'm dead ass serious. We are at war, perpetual war. So anything you could do. I got a little RBG bracelet, and I got this little Adinkra symbol bracelet. I'm gonna start wearing that shit. They hate us. And now I'm not saying that's gonna enough to defeat them, but as we work towards defeating them, we can fucking hit back. And they hate us, and they ignorant as fuck. So it don't even have to be. If you are a black person, you go get a goddamn Buddhist symbol. They don't know what the fuck. If a black person, they don't know what the fuck they even looking at. Get a little stack figurine. It don't have to be nobody. Just get a figurine with black figures. And put a little figurine on your desk and put some fucking a couple of cowrie shells and 3 pieces of dried corn. I'm telling you, your coworkers, your white coworkers, are gonna sit in that car and, oh, I can't wait. We need a new pope. They ain't got a pope right now, so they real vulnerable. White folks don't have they're reaching to God, and their direct connection to God is dead, and they haven't elected a new one, so they real vulnerable. They say they take advantage of our vulnerabilities, so why not theirs? But that's too much time on that. Protracted warfare. Protracted warfare is that is carried out over a long period of time. We tend to think of warfare, you declare war, you fight the war, you negotiate the peace, and then that's it. Europeans only have 2 states of being: war and preparation for war. That's it. They are never at peace. Their peace is preparation for war. Peace to us means we not engaged in war, we're not prepping for war, we're not arming for war, we're not studying war. Peace means, okay, I don't have to fucking fight. That's why even when they are defeated over the long period of time, they tend to win, because if they lose the war, they win the peace. They even tell us this. They write it in their poetry, they write it in their fiction, they write it in their journals. They don't have the capacity for peace. You go all the way back thousands of years ago, and they go excavate grave sites in places in the foothills of the Caucasus Mountains, in the valleys of pre-civilization Germany. And they got bashed skulls. Every time they find some archaeological site in Europe, it's a bashed fucking skull. And human teeth marks in the bone. But we keep thinking, hey, we keep projecting our humanity onto them. And I'm not saying they don't have the capacity to be human, but, put up or shut up. I'll believe it when I see it. So, African people, I hate to say this, and this should be one of the wars. No, it's not even on here. We're in a protracted war. We're in a war that started before we were born, and because of our ineffective resistance, it's more likely going to be here after we're not here. And we should conduct ourselves accordingly. As unpleasant as that seems, we should be in perpetual psychological asymmetric warfare against all these systems and institutions. Yes, they're all against us. And we let them think we were crazy for reaching the conclusion that everything is against us. Oh, you're just paranoid. Oh, you just have a negative attitude. No, everything is against you. Why is every fucking time they go and do whatever, anytime a researcher, you go into schools, little black boys are penalized to a greater degree. Black students are more likely to be suspended. Black students' work and uniforms are more highly scrutinized. Black schools are less funded. You go into banks, black borrowers, black accounts are flagged more frequently. Black people are less likely to get loans. Black people are paying higher interest. You go to fucking hair and nail salons. Black patrons are attacked by and they're using more toxic chemicals and more toxic products for products that cater to black. You go to any industry. You go to the goddamn grocery and produce industry, and the rotten food is coming to the poorest neighborhood and charging the highest prices. You go to housing. Do I have to mention housing? all areas of human interaction. Fuck it, you go to the military where you sign up to fight and die for this motherfucker. And black people don't get promotions. They literally still giving out motherfucking medals to dead soldiers that died in the Civil War and World War II. Posthumous. Obama spent half his presidency handing out medals to dead black soldiers that should have got the shit. Black soldiers don't get the GI Bill. They're more likely to be court-martialed. They're more likely to be dishonorably discharged for committing the same crimes. You go to sports. We carry the whole sports industry on our back. And you just saw in the most recent NBA drive, I take your word for it, shitting on black athletes. The president called every black athlete a sons of bitch and tells those sons of bitches to get off their knees. Called every black mother of an NFL player a bitch. And you still, black men, sit in front of your fucking TV and watch the motherfucking NFL, the CTE industry. Fuck is wrong with you? I have to say, like DMX said, I don't know. I don't think Bob and I was watching. Are y'all niggas crazy? But and knowing all this, you name an industry. I bet you if we look to the video game, to the plant, house plant and flower arrangements, they find a better way to be racist with that shit. Transportation. Infrequent and disrupted service in the black fucking neighborhood. And the white neighborhoods where white folks don't even catch the damn train or use the damn buses, that shit's running like clockwork. The shit comes south of Roosevelt, shit come down King Drive, the shit don't run right at all. They find to be racist in every way. And they got the nerve. They got other Negro coon fucking sellouts out here looking at other black people. You're paranoid. Why are you so negative? Oh, you got a victim mentality. Man, let me tell you something. It's a protracted warfare. We are at war. You better learn to love fucking war. War without violence. Kwame Ture said, politics and diplomacy is war without violence. It is a conflict where you're trying to prevent the loss of something you value and gain resources you are entitled to, and other people are trying to do the same or deny you. Politics is war without violence. We need to go into politics the same way you would approach warfare. Get your emotion, get out your feelings, get out your flesh. Be cold, distant, and calculating. Target, execute, evaluate, renegotiate. We mad emotional about, but they don't care about us. Democrats don't care, they don't care. Say, well, okay, this is election cycle. What's our policy platform? Which politicians? None of them are on our side. So we can't depend on any of them being on our side. So who's most vulnerable to us? Who do we have the highest likelihood of defeating or swaying or undermining? But nope. Are you Democrat or Republican? I'm Pan-African. God damn it. But I digress. So that's called warfare without violence. Then there's civil war. And I think that when you say civil war, you think about the U.S. Civil War. But I have to tell you, every revolution was preceded, followed by, or during its execution had a civil war. The Russian Revolution, the American Revolution, and African revolutions. You got to decide. That's the problem with the Haitian Revolution. The Haitian Revolution didn't have. They allowed their sellouts throughout the chattel slavemen in Hispaniola. The Dominican Republic and Haiti were one. The French created a buffer class of mixed race individuals. I can't get into that. Let me just tell you something. Don't be afraid of internal conflict. Internal conflict does not delegitimize our struggle. I don't give a fuck if we fighting each other. Number one, we are not and never have been our own worst enemies. Number two, we have every right to engage in internal struggle, internal conflict, even if it comes to blows. That's our business, and our enemies should not be allowed to disrupt that or use that as justification for their atrocities against us. Number two, a line has to be drawn in the sand. We're not ready for that discussion, but we might have to have it. But civil war, what is also called fratricide, it is a necessary component for struggle. just and unjust. And we tend to be afraid of that because white folks have criminalized us. And a lot of times, the more we put off an internal struggle, whether or not we're going to be integrationist, ADOS, FBA motherfuckers, or we're going to be true Pan-Africanists, the longer we put off that necessary line in the sand, the more devastating the conflict will be. So it's best to get it out and get it over with from day one. And the motherfuckers we got to write off, throw them to the waste can of history. Go over there, stay over there. So civil wars can be ideological. They can be academic. And I prefer to keep it in the ideological component. Another conflict, holy wars. I don't think I have to explain because I'm getting short on time. Holy wars are basically religious wars. It's funny because the conflict between Pakistan and India is a Hindu-Islamic war. They claim they're fighting over territories, Kashmir and all that. That is a religious conflict, a nuclear powered religious conflict. And it's funny to me because there's a lot of black people that like to act like, get into Buddhism and Hinduism as a higher form of spirituality, especially in the 90s when I was out here running around chasing after these Nubian sisters, and they all had some type of the Buddhist will or some Hindu symbols in their house. I really thought they was on some shit. And I'm like, that's just as bad as Christianity and Islam. So you ain't found nothing more better. All male chauvinist murder cults. But I mean, holy wars are pretty self-explanatory. Okay. Next, we have proxy war. And when I was talking about the U.S. does not fight against nuclear powers, the U.S. is cowards. Most imperial nations are founded by and sustained through cowardice. They win by deceit and undermining more so than direct confrontation. They tend to erode and undermine their enemies until their enemies is so disrupted. I'll dump crack cocaine on them. I'll slowly squeeze off funding from their institutions and engage in benign neglect. And then I come with the hammer of the militarized police. So they rather attack you, again, psychologically. They rather erode your non-combat institutions. They attack your children and women and hold them hostage before they come at you. But a proxy war is basically when they judge up other nations to fight on their behalf. So Ukraine is a proxy war between the U.S. and Russia. Many African decolonial struggles were proxy wars involving the U.S., Western Europe, Israel, and the Soviet Union. And then when the white folks finished their fight, most African nations were hung out to dry. Looking at you, Ibrahim. Proxy. But I digress. Y'all ain't ready for that discussion either. But proxy war is probably one of the most insidious, disgusting forms of warfare. You know, many of these gangs, the gang war that is happening in many of these gangs are proxies for the state, which is funny where you find a lot of black people who look at gangs as potential opposition to government overreach. As Minister Farrakhan said, that gangs and gangbangers are warriors. When gangs are proxies of the state. There have been articles and exposés and documentaries exposing that gangs, when black people have risen up to fight against the state, the gang has paid, the government paid local gang members to control and police the black community in the interest of the government. When you look at the 1992 rebellion, the Rodney King rebellion, and black folks rose up and there was supposed to be this gang truce. The government reached out to local interest and had them break that truce and have them, because they knew that the gangs, if the gangs reconstituted their conflict, that would cause an erosion of the unity and the solidarity that had grown out of the Rodney King atrocity. So when black people are rising up and fighting for our interests and we have to have a gang truce, that means when there is no gang truce, then gangs, by their very existence, are disruptive to our unification. And that's why every time black people are rising up and fighting politically and ideologically against institutions of oppression, oh, gang truce. If every time black folks rose up and I went off the air, and then when I come back on the air, me coming back on the air seems to coincide with black people calming the fuck down. And I don't know why black people, yeah, we got a gang truce, we got a gang truce. What the fuck? So the gang war is a proxy war by U.S. intelligence agencies and U.S. law enforcement agencies. And gangs have the same goal. I mean, read Black Self-Annihilation in Service to White Supremacy, Dr. Amos Wilson's book, Black on Black Crime. Read that book or go watch my review of that book. So proxy wars can be smaller states under colonial domination. In fact, y'all not gonna like this. Israel is a proxy of the United States. U.S. Christians, Christian Zionists, go read about the Christian dispensation. Zionism and Israel is more about Christian prophecy than Jewish prophecy. And the chief funders, defenders, and armors of Israel are Christians. Christian Zionists outnumber Jewish Zionists 1,000 to 1. And I tell you, if you are at an anti-Zionist march and you see a white person there, they're more likely to be a person of Jewish descent than they are to be a Christian. Some of the most prominent anti-Zionists are Jews, and some of the most prominent pro-Zionists are Catholics and Protestants. But y'all ain't ready to have these discussions. God damn. But proxy war, in my opinion, and then we got, and I'm only going to have 15 minutes for discussion. Economic warfare, and I put this proxy warfare, and also, I didn't put it on here, but it needs to be. And this one. So I'm going to come back later and discuss these last ones. Economic, spiritual, and race. And I started to say spiritual and psychological are the same thing, but so many of y'all are spooked out. So many of us have a strong emotional belief. So many of us have a strong emotional belief in a non-existent nothing. I have to give spiritual warfare its own due. So the next time I come back, do I have any questions, comments, criticism? Preston John making fun of my shirt. You know, I had to go downtown earlier today, and I got to go back downtown tonight, believe it or not. So I want to look the part. I had to wear my camouflage, but this is a Benetton shirt. My first Benetton shirt. I've been wanting a Benetton shirt since I was 15 years old, and I finally get one, and people go in on me. Thank you, BM, and thank you, Avon Marlin, for your contributions. There are ways for you to support. Go and subscribe to the African World Order page. I just got a message that there were some issues with PayPal on the African World Order website, which I probably won't be able to get it to it tomorrow, but by tomorrow morning or afternoon, the issues of the website should be resolved. You can support that way. Any other questions, comments, or criticisms? You can type in it. If I missed it, then just retype it. If not, why did the UN clear the UAE of any wrongdoing for using the RSF as a proxy to extract gold from Sudan? Why did they do that? You know, one thing I talk about is Arabized Africans and Islamic imperialism. That's another discussion. Man, there's so much shit that are brought up, but the UN doesn't extract resources. So if the UN cleared the UAE, it's not, I don't think it has much to do with the extraction of resources because the UN doesn't directly deal with that. So there are some power brokers in the UN that might do that, but the UN itself as a body doesn't. But yes, the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, and most of the Wahhabist Islamic nation. And then what's funny is the nation that is providing the number one resistance to the Zionist atrocities is Yemen. The poorest Arab nations have provided the best resistance, while the wealthiest Arab nations have all cooperated with the West and Israel. Think about that. As we sit here and look up to entrepreneurial Negroes, thinking the money is freedom, cut the check type scammers and prosperity politics. But I think you answered your own question with that question. You could have just stated, what are your thoughts on the black militant group in Cincinnati that pushed out the Nazi group? All respect due, thanks and praises. I think that we should not tolerate. One of my first acts of rebellion was to work to disrupt a KKK march in southern Missouri, down close to the Tennessee border. So I don't think we should allow any sanctuary for racism or racist, especially overt racist. So I hope that they sustained and expand their mission, and we should all give thanks and appreciation for their efforts. And if any fucking Nazis want to try to march here, I mean, I live on the south side of Chicago, and I ain't seen no racists that motherfucking crazy. But if you do live in some areas, please join any type of collective movements. Don't make me have to go get my little revolver, because I wouldn't stand for that shit in my community or anywhere near where I live either. Tell them take that shit up to the mountains. Take that shit up to back to Appalachia. Don't come around our parts. You talking about what? I hate the motherfuckers. Fresh and fit, musty and sloppy. What are your thoughts on Myron Gaines, a guy who's Arab and cosplaying as a black man to be anti-black? Well, I mean, a lot of these Muslims just want to be Arab, so I guess there's a lot of blacks who want to be Arab, so I guess we'd have at least one Arab who want to play black. But let me be more serious. They're grifters, they're hustlers. You know, if I got on here tomorrow and started doing, I mean, you have the low-brow people who appeal to 12 and 13 and 14-year-olds, and then you have Kevin Samuels. If you look at Fresh and Fit, you look at Kevin Samuels, it's the same program. Misogyny, self-hatred. They're just less sophisticated for the less sophisticated thinkers and the less sophisticated folks. But it's all the same. I hate the guts. I don't support them. And like they come to your town, maybe it's time to start running out these misogynists like we run out the racists when they come to town. He's biracial. Okay, we got a fan of Myron here. James is a fan, and he wants to defend him by saying he's biracial. So that excuses all of his anti-black assertions. Okay, we're not going to attack your boy. Okay, it says, what do you think of poor folk, especially black folk, Robin asked, who are recruited to the military or pushed into it as a way out of poverty and legal troubles? I know mad people. KRS-One said, you want a salary, you want kids, so you put on a badge and kill people for it. I don't think that it's justified to escape poverty by committing atrocities or facilitating atrocities. And I just say find a better way. I had a program with my not-for-profit here called the Green Teens, and we basically were teaching young people urban agriculture, how to grow and sustain an urban farm, a farm within the confines of, and it was going really well. But a big part of that youth program, because if I'm gonna do any youth program, a big component of any program I do for youth is going to be anti-military recruitment, to stop, because I was working with from 15 to 18-year-olds, and many of them were being recruited. And I think they got wind of that, and they just 1 year, even though they came out, they would bring their donators out, and they would survey the land and the growth that we were doing, and they would all praise us. And then one time they sent us an email like, yeah, we're not fucking with y'all no more. No more money, no more kids, get the fuck out of here. And I think that was really the year that I had a relatively large number of seniors that were contemplating the military so they could get some tuition. It's better to go into debt. Take out student loans and go into fucking debt before you go into death. Debt is better than death. So I don't think there's any justification. You know, I had an Uncle Gene who was a minister, and he wanted me to go to the military because I was one of them young, poor black people who wanted to get out of poverty. And as far as legal troubles, you know, It's better to be a petty criminal than a war criminal. I just don't see that as an excuse. Black people in the United States, we cannot use our suffering as justification to compound the atrocities and sufferings of our brothers and sisters. I mean, I'm sympathetic, but I can never be that sympathetic where I will start justifying volunteering to become a war criminal. And if you do get in there, sabotage. That's all I can say. Sabotage. Who wrote that song? Beastie Boys? Sabotage that motherfucker. I mean, go watch that movie Schindler's List about how he was making weapons for the Nazis and everything that came out of his factory had some type of defect or malfunction. Don't read the real history because that movie is pure propaganda. But I'm just saying, if you do end up in the military, make sure your unit, your regiment, your base just can't seem to get it right. That's what I would say. I've seen some black leftists on Twitter call Garvey a right-winger and wonder what you think of that. I think they're some fucking dumbasses and they need to get out their own asses. How dare they attack Marcus Mosiah Garvey? Shut the fuck up. Garvey is not a right-winger. Garvey was a Christian. He was a capitalist. He was a conservative. But he was a black revolutionary who was the prototype. Thoughts on Century from Marvel. He was always kind of a boring character. I don't like OP characters. I like characters with vulnerability. And it was always used to be DC. Somebody asked what my thought on Century from Marvel. DC was known to have the OP characters, the overpowered, invulnerable characters. Whereas Marvel had the complex characters that had vulnerabilities, that had moral complexity and were not overpowered. So even if they had a very powerful superpower, there was some catch. Like Wolverine is invulnerable with adamantium skeleton, but he would go into berserker mode. And you go into a fight with Wolverine, and he could get to a state where he's attacking everybody. So he was unwieldy. Like Cyclops, he had the powerful concussive beams, but he was essentially blind without his ruby quartz. And it wasn't even physical. Like Nightcrawler was very powerful, but he always had, because he was a highly religious Christian, but he looked like a demon and his father was a demon. So his psychological turmoil. You see what I mean? Professor X had a very powerful mind and a weak body. So I like Marvel characters for different, because I used to read JLA, some of the most magnificent writing, JLA, the Justice League of America, and all the Martian Manhunter. Fucking hell, what can you do with Martian Manhunter and Superman? So when Marvel characters start to get OP, I kind of lose interest. I've never seen him as a very interesting blonde-haired Aryan character. But I mean, I haven't seen the new Thunderbolts yet. Maybe they've done something better with him. But my thoughts are that Century should be over and he has a better place in DC. Leave Marvel with its underdog complexity. You know, I like Daredevil. You know, Spider-Man, his moral code, and the fact he didn't have no money or even Batman. Like Batman had billions of dollars, and Spider-Man was a poor student or a high school teacher who didn't have no money or no real resources, and he had self-limiting. So every hero, where I don't see that with Century. So he don't belong. He belongs over there with Superman and Martian Manhunter. He don't need to be bumping heads with fucking Winter Soldier and the Punisher. Stupid. Okay. All right, I think that's it. Okay, Christopher. This is the last one. Terminator picture. Okay, I guess I joined the army because I was dead broke. That said, I probably wouldn't be as radical as I am now without that experience. But that's not an excuse. My sons will never. Okay. Hey, a happy ending to this story. Disney needs to get this story. This is the kind of shit. I got a granddaughter now. I'll sit and watch this story. This is a happy ending. I appreciate you, Christopher. That's what I like to hear. We all fucked up. I didn't fucked up plenty of times, but you make it right on the other end. You know, and I hope you share your story and your experience with the U.S. murder machine with everybody. Don't just, not just your sons, but every youth you come into contact with. Let them know, and I think they'll listen to you more than me because I've never enlisted. So I appreciate you, Christopher. I appreciate the rest of y'all. Please go subscribe to the African World Order YouTube page. The numbers went up and then they just leveled off, man. Y'all just left us hanging. So, share with your friend. Oh, I didn't bootleg Skip. Anyway, I'll be on Friday. I owe Skip a bootleg rendition, but it's 8:30 and I have to cut off because I got to run back downtown one more time tonight. Oh, am I doing spoilers? Sorry, I don't mean to spoil this shit for y'all. And I'm supposed to go see Sinners. I invited my wife out for a hot date. And I was like, we're just going to go see some movies. We don't even have to do the chill part. But she's a busy woman too, I guess. Anyway, if you want to come on and share the stories, man, holla at your boy. Come through, because I'd love to hear from black vets. You ever read that book, Bloods? If you haven't read Bloods, you don't know nothing about being black in the military. Read Bloods for dudes like me who never enlisted if you want to know what it's like and what black soldiers went through. Anyway, thank you for tuning in. We'll pick up our last few forms of warfare for discussion, and I'll open up on Friday and let folks come on live as well. So anyway, I'll see y'all Wednesday after next, every first and third Wednesday, Rational Radical Show, y'all. Like, share, subscribe. Peace.